Sweet.
All right, hello everyone. So starting a little bit early because like Coach Ron was saying, we want to make sure all the technical hiccups are ironed out. We've had issues between Zoom and LinkedIn lately.
Yep. I think this topic is so fresh, new, cutting edge that you also deal with so much warfare around anytime you're trying to, get new ground, new territory. I coach leaders, and you know this, Tim, in the pursuit of diligence. There's a famous proverb that says, "The hand of the diligent leads surely to plenty." And I think we've categorized it psychologically, at least in our clinics and coaching over the last 25 years, is that you have kind of two groups just to 30,000 mile high view assessment of yourself. Are you a starter or are you a finisher? And in order to be successful, you've got to learn to be both. Although you can, pull to the strengths of others, say, hey, can you finish this for me? Or, help me finish it. But it's the grind that people talk about is the rub of development. You know what I mean? You're developing new territory, claiming new territory, and there are, these blocks that try to prevent you. But, you know, this is why I'm so glad we're talking on the subject of heart coherency, because heart coherency precedes mental endurance and mental clarity. And most people have no idea how to tap, they revert to caffeine or a methamphetamine maybe or a drug to try to get them buzzed to keep going. And really, the treasure lies in the heart, the passions of the
Absolutely.
heart.
Absolutely.
So
All
let's,
right, it is 12:30 now here in Texas, and I want to formally kick us off here. So we did start a little early just to make sure all the technology was working, but I'm Tim Boyko. I am the head of strategic growth at Hire, where we validate, activate, and accelerate you. And how do we do that? Through our awesome neuroscience behavioral analytics. And so you can reach out to me to learn more about what we do both at an individual and at a team level with our cultural epigenetics analytics platform. Groundbreaking state-of-the-art technology that is literally unleashing teams all over the place to fulfill themselves as individuals and as teams. But anyway, I'll pause on that because I can talk about that for a long time. I want to introduce and I want to introduce executive coach Ron Kardashian, and we have a powerful, powerful topic lined up for everyone today.
yeah, thanks, Tim, for having me. I want to dive right into kind of the continuation of what we've been talking about in terms of optimizing leadership development. I want to give you top leadership coherence secrets today that are rooted in neuroscience, little biblical truth, peak executive function. And I want to emphasize the fact that a lot of people who are taking this assessment, they immediately have an edge in the marketplace. And I'll tell you why. And right now, we're working a campaign where we're doing a radical price reduction on this. We're getting lower and lower and lower because we're finding out that if we can get this tool into the college level and help a teenager or a young adult actually find out what their purpose, destiny, calling, and then wrap it around in an identity piece, it is changing the trajectory of their career, their future, their finances, and the amount of money that they can make. And I think we need to talk about this a little bit more in depth because a lot of people just think, oh, I've taken assessments before, I've taken Myers-Briggs before. Let's talk a little bit about being coherent to modern day technology. And then I want to segue into him to actual practical heart coherence secrets that can actually help us today, if that's cool.
Yeah. Good.
Let's have you and I have this discussion about what you went through. You came to me a couple years ago and said, Coach, I'm stuck. I'm a corporate executive, right? Tell us a little bit about why you
Sure.
came and engaged me, and then move into how pioneering the assessment was, because people love stories. They actually love the real life testimony.
Yeah, I mean, so at the time I was doing consulting. I was doing independent executive level consulting with a boutique consulting firm. And when I was looking at everything, I've always had mentors and coaches throughout my life because it's a pillar of who I am. One thing that my dad instilled in me is always learn. Doesn't matter who from,
Yeah.
everyone's got a little golden nugget. Always be open to learn from anyone and everyone. And so that's been a pillar throughout my entire life. And what happened was there was a frustration, especially in the breakthrough of health and finances, that really drove it. And
Mhm.
as you know, there's the old proverb that says a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And
Very
that
powerful.
and that projection, I didn't see that happening yet. The other side of it was health. So at the time, I was over 330 pounds. I have four daughters. And as my wife kept reminding me, you need to change something if you want to walk every single one of them down the aisle.
It wasn't just make more money,
No,
it
no.
was getting healthy.
As getting healthy. It's like someone told me a long time ago and it stuck with me. And I apologize, I don't remember who told me this, but it was a retired CEO of a big company. And he goes, Tim, learn from my mistake. Don't make money for your family, make it through your family.
Make it through your family. Mm.
That was so powerful to me. And so that's when I knew something had to change. And that's when I reached out to you because 330 pounds, I've tried to lose weight, tried other programs, all that kind of stuff, but it didn't work. So then working with you, when I took the 300 question assessment, so I'll be honest with you, as I was going through 300 questions, that got a little frustrating when you get to the end. But when you stick it out and see the results, wow, game
Yeah.
changer.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
insights that showed where, and because the exercise that you do is powerful, you go through and you had me rate where I thought my behavioral levels were at.
Yeah.
And then you revealed where I actually was at. In some places it was the same, but many it was radically different, not even off by a point or two. It was like I remember nurturance. I think I put myself at a 3, and you're like, well, no, Tim, you're actually really good in that. It's like I don't remember if it was a 7 or an 8, but it was much higher than I anticipated. And then there were areas that I rated myself high, and it feels like, yeah, you're actually frustrated and your brain's in overload because
Yeah.
of this. And
Yes.
so,
Which,
yes, I wasn't even
which brings
coherent.
the, just to interject, which brings the projection of the word hustle. I hate that word. In fact, I encourage everybody just eradicate that out of your vocabulary. It comes from the root word hustler. You're not a hustler. If you're a hustler, your energy vibe changes a little bit, where you're in overdrive constantly, and you're perpetuating a different heart flex or a coherency of an irregularity. It's called frustration. And so we'll dive into that in a minute, but keep going.
And that's exactly what was happening is
Yeah.
while I was doing a lot of the work, because I was in constant overload doing it, it was constant frustration. And of
Yes.
course, when I'm coming home, and you're coming home from a long day of work, or in many cases, I was even working remotely. So I just leave the doors here of this office
Yep.
and I'm going through that. And I'm unleashing it onto my wife, onto my kids, and it's like that's not good for relationships. That's not good for building family. And family is very important to me. My wife and my kids are
Yep.
super important to me.
That's
And
right.
so those three things is really what drove me to go start working with Coach Ron.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring up this graph because most people don't really understand this. They haven't gotten it down because this is new. Artificial intelligence is actually working wonders for the assessment of human performance. And we're talking about making you better individuals. But here is Tim's heart on frustration, or an example of it. It is not actually your heart, but this is a heart rate rhythm of someone who's frustrated. And how this affects work performance, according to the HeartMath Institute, I have the data here. It says internal coherence activates the brain's and anterior cingulate cortex, or the frontal lobe of the brain, which is responsible for all executive decision making, impulse control, focus, and forethought. So, Tim, what you were really saying is that, coach, there's something off in my brain. Not that I have brain damage, but there is a rhythm off. And what happens is neuroscience has defaulted to just brain. And what I'm proposing is that it's not just brain, it is the brain, but it is also the heart. And once we get this rhythm in sync, what happens is it bridges empathy. Now, let me capitalize on this because as soon as you move into a state of appreciation, even during the day, you could be in 10 team meetings and, like our COO, he's on, 8 calls. Sometimes I'll talk to him. I said, "How was your day?" Because I've literally been on the phone all day. I'm like, my brain, I need to go to the gym. And so I'm coaching him on how to activate appreciation through the day. Now, let me say something here. It's very powerful, Tim, that you did. And the reason why you dropped not only accelerated your business, accelerated your calling, solidified some home standards, were more coherent to your daughters, but you also lost 100 and how many pounds?
Over 80 pounds. Yeah.
Over 80 pounds, almost 100 pounds. Okay, so watch this now, you guys, is appreciation kicked in, heart cardia kicked in, and Tim, you were able to develop empathy for yourself. This is
Yeah.
the missing piece, is that there's a great command, love God as you love yourself. And this was taught early year world because, and a lot of people genuinely feel it's actually selfish to love yourself. And we're not talking about self-love, self-righteousness. We're talking about a very healthy understanding of your own internal boundaries, removing toxicity from you. We hear all the therapists talk about that. Creating work solace to where you're very tempered and you're in environments where you control you. And what I want to advocate today on this call is that what is your relationship with your body? What is your relationship with your mind? I'll never forget a therapist asked me this, Tim, you know this. And when I went to, 80 hours of therapeutic development, cognitive behavioral therapy, I checked myself into a clinic when I was dealing with heavy addiction behaviors, which I'm very candid about and open about and now free of. However, every time I talk about it, it keeps me more accountable to say, hey, thousands of people are hearing you say now this. And actually, it gives me a strength. There's this ancient proverb that says, articulate or confess your sins, faults, one ye to another, so you may be healed. And there's this self-perpetuation empathy that comes and says, Ron, you're okay. You're allowed to love yourself. You're allowed to nurture yourself. Because you mentioned nurturance. And what I wanted to tie in was that the power of the assessment doesn't only assess your ability to perform your job, increase your potential. I mean, we can compare you to other billionaires, pro athletes. If you can see how their heart coherency moves, their brain waves move, you can copy it. You can duplicate it. You can become them. And I think this is the magic, the power, and the simplicity of the assessment. In your case, I said, Tim, you're very high in nurturance. What's your relationship with your body? Do you know how to nurture yourself? And Coach Ron didn't know how to do that. This therapist asked me, what's your relationship with your body? And immediately, right out of my gut, I was kind of making fun of her in my head, going, I don't have time for some type of somatic yoga class here at this clinic. I want to get on with the higher dimension teaching. And she rocked my world because I had to answer that question. And what came out of me was the descriptive adjective named abuse, that my relationship with my body was very abusive. Wake up at 5 a.m., beat it up in the gym, crash dieting, hardcore supplementation, no carbohydrate intake. Then you move into the addictive behaviors, whether it's drinking too much or this or that, or whatever it is that you do to abnormally use. Abuse is abnormal use. The assessment brings you right into alignment immediately, immediately, and gives you an edge into your own human performance. I always tell people it's much like blood work. In fact, I reposted our article today on LinkedIn. Look for it. And it's a $20 million insight of somebody that I coached very early on that lost $20 million because no coherency. Now, if I could have increased those rhythms of his heart then, and we didn't have the data then, this was, 15, 20 years ago when I coached him, I could have saved him from making that decision. Although that's speculative because he didn't call me until after he lost it all. They ended up with, 1 million left over. And my POV, because I was coherent to empathy, I said, well, you can either look at the 20 million you've lost, or we can look at the 1 million we have left. It's POV, it's perspective. And what happens when you take assessments that read brain behavior, behavioral traits, it is no different than us withdrawing blood from your body and saying, okay, you've got diabetes. And now we have a roadmap to fixing it. So much so you become coherent to your own personal needs, areas that you are completely blind to. And this is the power of it. I think everybody in the world should not only do this one time, but you should do it several times a year, because there is no other metric system in the world, Tim, that can actually measure brain coherency as well as optimizing trait performance. We're doing this now in the sunset of retirees to prevent Alzheimer's and dementia. Because if we can see your ambition level starting to decline, we can say, okay, I need you to get back on the golf course. If we're starting to see endurance levels where you're getting fatigued and you no longer want to be an advocate for family, and you've lost the drive of legacy, and you don't know where to put your wealth, you're fatiguing internally, boom, we can change them around in seconds. Because what it does is it gives you a data read. You get the actual 6 to 10 page report and you remove speculation. That's what coherence is. Coherence is the ability to function on an internal level at a very high rate that most people do not adhere to. And I want to give you some of these points here. Studies from the HeartMath Institute show that heart rhythm coherence improves synchronization between the autonomic nervous system and the prefrontal cortex. Autonomic nervous system, your ability to self-regulate. I'm
Oh,
constantly talking to people about emotional intelligence, but
yeah,
we also have another thing here. We not only have EQ, we have, right, IQ, which
yeah,
is the comment you made earlier about, hey, this assessment is 300 questions. Well, you're darn right. I argued with our head of neuroscience at Kellogg Business School. He's all, Ron, we can reduce it and get the same outcome. I said, wrong, professor. I said, I don't want to reduce it. I want people to see, especially multitaskers, especially high anxiety people who are fidgety. You know, you can't sit still. You have a very hard time concentrating. Maybe you have ADD or ADHD. You can change this. The brain is filled with neuroplasticity, nerve plasticity, pliable. We can reshape it like a muscle, but you got to get into the neurological gym. It's limitless. It is limitless what the brain can do under the proper coaching, guidance, and now tools. Because you can't just throw yourself into the hand of an executive coach or a life coach or a performance coach or any type of mentor that says, I've got a cutting edge tool to change your brain without the data. Don't do it anymore. It's absolutely foolish because they don't know the intricacies of your interwovenness.
right.
Trauma, for example, alters cognition. If you've been traumatized as a child, let me give you a real-time example. You know this, one of our clients, Tim. Um, she was traumatized at 22 years old. Um, she was married, the husband died. She came and saw me 10 years later. When she took the assessment, she was still operating at a 1 in self-confidence, 1 in composure, 1 in tough-mindedness, 1 in assertiveness. And she's wondering why every single day of her life is a hustle. We hate that word. She's in overdrive. She needed a place to process the trauma. And one area I've become an expert in is understanding what I've coined as the trauma lock. Science and studies and psychologists and therapists have said when you go through trauma, it locks you into the age in which you endured the trauma. I see it. I see grown men acting like children.
Yeah,
I see grown women acting like fools, drinking too much. I was assessing a company in Europe and or in Canada, and the CEO really wanted to hire this executive female. It was a friend family, and I said, "Great, let's put her through." We were doing probably 300 assessments per month. They were doing mass hiring. We were the last line of defense. You bring it through the system, HR, interviews, background checks, everything. Boom, then give them the assessment. as their ability to perform the job. I did the data on her. I went back to the CEO. I go, she does not align with your corporate DNA because we have the ability to actually read the DNA now of the companies because we know the behavioral traits of everybody who's running the company, which
Yes.
most people miss. It's like companies don't run companies, people run companies. So if you've got a bunch of backwards ass people running the company and wonder why the company's not accelerating or divisions are plummeting, we know how to fix all that in a matter of seconds. Now with this data, I mean, it takes time to do the assessment, an hour, hour and a half, whatever, but relative, it's seconds. So I said, Mr. CEO, this is a problem here. This individual is a nice person, educated, but there's something going on in her private life that needs further discussion. He goes, no, 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 no. I know this person. I know. So he argued with me. I said, okay, it's your decision, sir. He says it's non-discriminatory. You don't discriminate. You cannot discriminate. And you cannot pit people against other people. This is strictly in the marketplace, an assessment, EEOC compliant, that actually creates an objective data point in the individual's ability to perform the job. That's it. So if you're a stay-home mom, how can we make you better? If you've got a child, how can we make him better? How about this? If you are an adult and having communication problems with your child, you can spend a couple bucks, assess your child, learn his behavioral traits, and talk to him in a way or she understands. There's a revelation for you. So she hired the woman. 3 months into the job, I think it was 6 weeks, 8 weeks, let's say, she was drunk at a corporate event dancing on the table. She had endured a trauma
Wow.
as a little girl, and she had developed destructive behaviors that were not conducive to optimizing maturity yet. Not that she couldn't do it. She just didn't have anybody to nurture her, give a proper prognosis into the trauma, and say, hey, let's do some leadership development around this first. Because I think that's the miracle behind cognitive assessments and what we've coined adaptability quotient, AQ. How well can you adapt to a new environment when you're hired at an executive level or as a director level or as an SVP? Or what's holding you back from moving from SVP to director to SVP or SVP to C-suite? What is the block there? What is it? Is it money? Because I get a lot of people who come to me and say, I don't know how to ask for money. I'm already making a 500,000 a year. I should be making 700,000. Just had a guy last week. I said, the problem is your self-confidence. You don't yet believe in you. So we were able to let's instead of misprognosing you, right? It's a wellness tool. So there's no diagnosis. It's just like a prognosis. Let's see. What is the perception in the relationship you have with your body? Do you not believe in you? Because as a man or a woman thinks, so she is. You cannot negate it. It's been around since the beginning of time. The greatest personal development programs in the world, Tim, all believe this. I believe it, and I've seen it as a cognitive expert and as a human performance expert. If you don't believe in you, then there's a breach. And it's understandable. It may not always be acceptable in certain circles, but it's understandable. And when you can unlock that, you've got instant job credibility, job stability. Why? You know thyself and have the ability to nurture the areas that you're suffering in. And this is very important that we understand this as people, as a species, as a society. How about as an economy? Because I'm getting ready to propose this to the United States government that if we can actually enhance the coherence of a society, then we can create more adaptation and intentionality. Because in order to transform, you had to be very intentional about your behavior. You
Very
were
much.
feeding food into your mouth that was not conducive to the passion and desire of your heart. And your wife was starting to get anxiety and fear around premature death of the husband that she loves. It was a complete incoherent disruptor for the culture of your home. Well, what I'm proposing is that you can change the culture of your workplace, especially you, head of HR, you, CEO. You guys should be sending this to your CEOs, your C-suites, your executives, your bosses. Let me speak on behalf of you. They need to do cultural assessments to go ahead and optimize fluidity and cohesion amongst teams. And it happens fast. Heart Math Institute is now propagating that it doesn't also move from an individual's heart. It moves in not heart coherence, it moves into social coherence to where you create psychological safety. You become a safe person. You affect her, you affect him because the heart rhythm has its own energy. It's beating, it's pulsing, and you can shift culture. And it's powerful. Isn't that
Wow.
something, Tim?
That is amazing. And it happens virtually or in person, right?
That's right. It doesn't matter. We can do this thing on Zoom. We do 90% of it. Coherence requires alignment, not external validation. You have to align with the person, right? Leaders lose power when they seek affirmation over alignment. The concept is alignment. Great leaders adjust their behavior not for crowd applause. They adjust it for impact. And so what I'm proposing is that become a person of impact, right? Internal coherence activates the brain's prefrontal cortex, um, impulse control, impulse. So I'm a guy that had deep emotional irregularity issues. I was non coherent to myself and to others. High performance coach, knew how to change people, knew how to motivate. Motivation only lasts so long. We're talking about lifetime change here. We're talking about you need to get a subscription to your heart, not just to Netflix.
I
You,
love
you
that.
need to you need to understand that you are the commodity, and that if you're using tools to self-soothe, which I do, I veg out in front of Netflix, okay? But if I'm not also investing in my heart coherence and getting data that makes me better on a daily or monthly basis, I'm missing out on something. I am literally missing out because it empowers me to lead from conviction rather than reaction. And we are such a reactionary society that I want to be more centered. I don't want to be reactionary. I don't want to go to the P.O. box and find a letter from the IRS and it changes my whole mood for the day. 90% of the time, they're damn wrong. At least the last time I've been to the post office box, I don't know them anything. You know what I'm saying? So, reaction versus conviction, right? And this is where I really encourage you guys to start journaling because the process of the handwritten, and you can type it, but try to write things out because it creates a new neurosynapse in the brain that allows you to breathe a little differently versus this. Sometimes, if you notice, sometimes we'll hold our breath. Breathing is the caveat to life. And learning how to breathe into the heart rather than just the lungs is the secret sauce to heart coherence. And we're now going to start a partnership with the Ritz-Carlton, as you know. We're in discussion with them. Their Leadership Institute got a hold of some of my stuff. And right, Tim, you were telling me that they loved my stuff and it was just like theirs. And they're charging 3,500 bucks for a weekend. We're charging half that. So you guys sign up and stay tuned because we're going to bring an eclectic group of forward-thinking leaders who are passionate about the brain-heart connection and become a leader who leads from the heart, not just the head. And it's powerful, it's transformational, and you create legacy change. In short.
Absolutely. Well, let's wrap this up here. This is powerful. One quick thing I want to add because the emotional intelligence, I remember the first time I heard that, and I want to speak to other people in corporate America because sometimes when you hear that, you think it's some foo-foo, whatever out there. It's an abstract content that really isn't rooted in reality. But
Yes,
I want to challenge that thinking because it absolutely is. It's biologically and neurologically inside of you. And when you're not handling and dealing with all of the emotions,
that's
you're
correct.
turning yourself into a health issue later on. You're
Yeah,
eventually going to become a ticking time bomb, or you're going to do something in the other side where you become so separated and you distance yourself. You end up making really, really bad decisions that will make others really sad.
Yes.
And so take the time to really dig in and understand emotional intelligence, and we're here to help you. We got the
Yes.
data for you. Reach out to us.
Yes. And also, if you guys are interested in a little bit more, we created a splash page. It's very marketing driven. Forget all the fluff. Just get right to the point. Get yourself an executive validation. It's 100% business deduction. You write it off as leadership development. You use it as employee development. You know, some of you corporations buy 20 or 50 of these things. We'll reduce the price even more. But go to brainvalidation.com. Is it
Yep.
brainvalidation.validation,
Validation.com.
not
Yep.
valuation? Tim can probably post it someplace. LinkedIn does not like us posting alternative links. So let me say it again, brainvalidation.com. Invest in yourself. Invest 100 to 200 bucks a month just for a year. 199, pay it up front. Get out your credit card and just do it because you're going to look back and go, this is the best money. Just ask Tim, was it one of the best monies you've ever spent?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you're down
Absolutely.
80 pounds. That alone
Yeah.
was worth the health because of the wear and tear on your body. So, how I want you to frame this is, yeah, it's a little pricey, but how valuable am I? That's self-worth.
Correct.
It's self-worth. And you are a valuable commodity. Investing in yourself gives other people the power to invest in you. Make the change. Thanks, Tim.
All right. Thank you, Coach Ron. And
Welcome.
so
God
with
bless you
that,
guys.
yep, we'll have a wonderful day. We are moving over to Coach Ron's YouTube feed if you to dive into this even further. So if you have the time, I will put his YouTube hash here that you can go search and find
And this
it.
this will be more of an emphasis on the spiritual component, which a lot of people are asking us to elaborate on. They want deeper revelation, deeper knowledge, and it will mainly focus on biblical virtue and verified university tested Bible congruency with science. So it's pretty cool stuff. Hope to see you
It
there.
is awesome. We'll see you there in a few minutes. Bye bye.
Okay, so sign off here and then I'll meet you on the other one.